I am a passionate Highlander, and I love Scotland, and I will take a stand to keep the United Kingdom together. I will give my life for my country, as my grandfather did in the First World War, and his brother Charlie. Highland Regiment, British Army, I am British forever. We will never change. We will keep our union together in the name of Jesus.
Thank you. Ricky Ross.
BBC Question Time. The most simultaneously popular and unpopular show, I think, on TV.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's still a ratings winner, but everyone fucking hates it, so I don't understand.
That's why they watch it, though.
Yeah.
Just so they can be angry.
And that's
to be
the problem.
furious at something.
But that's the problem, because it's actually done by an independent production company for the BBC. The BBC doesn't produce it. All they're interested in is ratings. They're not interested in any kind of journalistic integrity in the way that potentially the BBC might have to be if it was an in-house production.
They try to give the audience the impression that it's live when it's not live.
That's correct.
The way they do that is that in the bumper between the TV shows, when you get an Up Next on BBC One, we go to Dundee for this week's Question Time. It's not the highlights of this week's Question Time. The next shot you get is now Fiona Bruce, going, and here we are in wherever we are, and off we go. And from the minute off we goes, and then we go to the title sequence and she asks the first question, it very much gives you the impression that everything that happens from that first question through to her saying we're out of time is exactly what happened. No edits, no cuts. That was a free-flow conversation. But it's not, because we now know, due to recent events with our man, is it Billy, or what is his name?
He's got to be called Billy,
I think he actually might be called Billy.
He is genuinely called Billy.
Yes.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
I think we all know what his PIN number is.
So we know that he was on, several times, but recently on one where I think it was Fiona Hislop was on. And we now know that the BBC admitted that they edited out her answer to him.
Yes.
But that means if they edit that out, they're obviously editing other stuff out. Now,
yes.
that could be for time purposes, whatever else. But my issue is the fact that they do not tell the audience that. The audience are given the impression that this is just what fucking happened. So therefore, when Billy says, the SNP are shit and you're fucking ridiculous or whatever, if Fiona just goes, all right, and there's no comeback to that, that reflects horribly on her, even though that's not actually what happened. So it is misleading.
I believe it's only filmed like an hour or so before. So whatever cuts they make are almost certainly usually just going to be for legalities, which was the case here. Fiona's answer was cut short because it covered something. I can't actually remember the details. I just know that it covered something that was actually...
I think it was a reference to Alex Salmond. That's what it was.
Yeah, so because it's basically a reporting ban, because it's a current case, it could not be discussed.
Does that not raise the question, though, why, if they cut the answer, they leave the question? Because they seem to have moved from audience asking questions to audience making statements. The way I would run it would be, one, it should be either broadcast live or it clearly says this is highlights.
They're never gonna do it on a broadcast live basis because it's just an open invitation to ban pots.
Yeah, but I think that'd be great TV.
Don't disagree. I'm just telling you why it's not going to happen.
You know how they do... you see the Comic-Con panels you get in America? You get the big room full of dorks, and then they have one security guy that holds a microphone, and you queue up, and you get to ask your one question to the panel.
And pay 20 quid for an autograph.
Or whatever, yeah. But the point is that you go up to the mic, you ask your question, and then you stand there and the question is answered. It's not, and now here's my time to talk. which is what the question time format seems to be going with. So Billy was just allowed to kind of sound off and give Billy's view on things, and we're going, well, we're not here to hear from Billy, we're here to hear from the panel. Billy's job here is to ask the panel a question and then sit down. And I would say that about everybody, not just like the Billies of the world. Like if you were a staunch Scottish nationalist, the same thing should apply. You're asking a question, the panel are responding, and okay, the audience can, you know, kind of ooh and ah, whatever else they want to do. But I don't think the audience should just be allowed to go off on one and then, as you say, they cut an answer out. If they know we're not getting to the answer to Billy's question, why is Billy's question remaining in the show? If you cut the answer, surely you have to cut the question. Just seems
I would
obvious to
agree.
me.
I mean, again, I would go back to. I mean, there's a serious issue with whatever her name is. Is it Alison something or other, the person who picks the audience, who has got allegedly links to far-right groups and things via her Facebook. You know, she's liked or posted or whatever the fuck it is you do on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. Stuff from Britain First and things like that. Her judgment of what makes good telly is that people like Billy make good telly. Now, he says that they actually invited him on, and that they invited him on for the first one of the Scotland one as well. The BBC is denying that, but the BBC doesn't do the guest picking. Mentorn does.
The thing the BBC can control about this, though, is how they go into the show, how the show is roughly presented.
Yeah.
So if on the bumper the language is, and now we go to the highlights of this week's Question Time from Dundee, produced by whatever company. One, you're creating distance, saying, look, we're kind of hiring someone out to do this.
Yeah, I mean,
and you're also saying this is an edit. I think my biggest issue is the fact that they try and give the impression that the events happen start to finish like it's live and there's no cuts.
I would agree.
I don't
think,
like that.
And it may well be, and we may simply have never paid attention, it may well be that there is something in writing somewhere within the credits, either at the beginning or the end, that actually says
it's
this
not
is...
in the beginning.
In much the same way that, you know, sitcoms used to say, you know, like Cheers was filmed in front of a live studio audience, kind of thing. Just to tell you that it wasn't canned laughter that you were hearing, for instance. I think it's not unreasonable to, for instance, to have something that says this is an edit.
If you look at Have I Got News For You, the way that will no doubt be shot is that they'll record for several hours and they'll trim it down to 30 minutes of A material. But the way they edit it together is it's seamless. You don't notice the edits, which is a talent. I mean, I admire people that are able to take that kind of thing and put it together so you feel like you're in a free-flow conversation that's happening in real time, even though you're not.
Yeah.
And that's a skill. When you're doing it with a show with comedians, that's fine. But when you're taking elected politicians discussing incredibly real-world sensitive issues, to put that together as you would an entertainment show, I get it from a rating standpoint.
You've just actually answered your own question. That's all it is. The motivation is ratings and getting people riled up so that they will interact with it, so that there's lots of social media stuff going on with it. It's just a bear pit. It's gladiatorial. If I were the SNP, I'd stop going on. I wouldn't admit that I was boycotting it. I would just, when question time comes, asking, is there anybody available? I'm really sorry there's nobody available this week. I'm really sorry there's nobody available this week. I'm really sorry there's nobody available this week. Until they get the message, and just not go on. I wouldn't make a fuss about boycotting it. I just wouldn't go on. Because if you know that you've got a far-right audience picker, Billy's the one we've caught. How many other wee fucking twats like that are getting asked in to bulk up the audience?
But there's a flip side to that as well, because you're saying there about, well, they've picked Billy, so they've probably picked other Billies.
Yeah.
But does it also not raise the question, well, when they pick a nationalist, what type of nationalist are they picking? Are they deliberately picking out your kind of stammery, stuttery, dorky nationalist who doesn't come across very well? And yet when they pick the Billy is the loud and he's very angry, he's very impassioned. Whereas, you know, our one is kind of like, well, I just think actually an independent Scotland would be quite good. You know, because you would think if, say, they're deliberately picking people out, well, if you're coming at it from that agenda, then why wouldn't you want to, you know, exploit it on every level, not just pick the Billies, but say intentionally pick crappy yes voters?
I don't want to be too conspiratorial, because I
No, go on.
Well, no, because you know my views on I'm not inclined towards big conspiracies. I always think that what you end up with is small conspiracies born out of convenience. When something happens and someone goes, "Oh, that's actually, we can do this because of that." That's what tends to happen. Like, there's a cock up and then there's a cover up. And then maybe sometimes there's a cock up, but out of the cock up somebody goes, "Oh, actually, that worked out quite well." And so that's what tends to happen. And it's not that somebody sits stroking their white cat in their supervillain lair working out how they're going to do A, B or C. It's actually just that stuff happens and then people see the fudge that can be done.
Totally agree. It's basically a private company's been hired in to do this. It's all about ratings.
Yeah.
There's not that many Scottish people versus the rest of the UK. What audience are you going to play to? You know, why would you want to give the SNP this platform to appeal to, what, like 6 million people up in Scotland?
Yeah.
When you're trying to get ratings across the whole of the UK?
Yeah.
It's not a conspiracy. It's just, that's the remit. That's what they've been told to do. You've got 10:30 on a Thursday night, get us the highest ratings you possibly can.
Yeah.
What content are you going to produce? Of course you're not going to get Nicola Sturgeon on every single fucking week. Or let's have
I mean, you have to ask yourself why a programme like that has been given to an independent production company rather than being produced in-house by BBC News.
Was it ever run by the BBC and then farmed out, or did it start?
How long has it been running? Because the BBC didn't used to use private production companies until kind of the 80s, when Thatcher carved up the BBC because she thought it was all full of lefties, which it was. And lots of people who worked for the BBC had to go out and form production companies. The BBC used to own all its own cameras, have all its own staff, all its own camera people and crew. And there was a reorganisation of the BBC that essentially meant that a lot of those people were let go, and the BBC then hired that in.
I don't think any of that stuff really matters that much, because it's a bit like a hospital manager blaming the cleaners for his hospital not being clean. It's like the buck stops with you if you're the boss. Buck stops with the BBC as far as question time is concerned. If there's something not going on with that show they don't like, they can say, "Well, we're not renewing your contract, we're not going to show that episode," or whatever.
But the counter to that, though, is that if you stick with the cleaner analogy, but what if they're doing a really good job cleaning? Because if the show is getting ratings, is there an issue? From the BBC's point of view, they're going, successful show. Well, if they haven't got an incentive to view it as being an issue, for us up in Scotland, obviously, when Billy's, going fucking full orange order, every few episodes, I mean, that's a bit of an issue for us. But if you're, Mr. Commissioning Man down at BBC, whatever it is, in England, are you going to give a fuck? Probably not, because of the show still getting ratings.
Either, surely. You would just...
So,
you're getting the ratings.
That's what I think it comes down to. And it's why the BBC kind of annoys me, because it tries to present itself as the public service broadcast or whatever else. It's still all about ratings.
I mean, I used to be somebody that would routinely watch Question Time. And I found that I was going to bed incredibly angry. And it was actually affecting a night's sleep. I would be so irritated by it. So I stopped watching it at night, and I started to just kind of stick it on the iPlayer the next day at work while, to listen. And then I had a little moment of, stop it. Because all you're doing is watching it, getting annoyed, and then fucking spouting about the fact that you're annoyed. Stop it. That is, all you're doing is self-harming. That's all that is. Stop it.
How would you categorise Question Time? As it should be. So if it's not an entertainment programme, what would it be classified as? Would you say news?
Well, it ought to be
sport,
news and
like
factual.
Wrestling. It says tuning in to see a Barney a wee bit, and you want the crowd to be shouting at the politicians. And
But the question...
Give the audience paint guns. Yeah, I mean, potentially.
But the question I did have, though, if we're arguing that Question Time is in the entertainment category, does that not raise the question, what other news items the BBC produce they're approaching with an entertainment mentality?
Yes.
Right. Now, again, if this is a private broadcaster, fucking that's the way the world is right now. But the BBC, using the public's money and allegedly the public service broadcaster, shouldn't really be having that mentality with its news programming, but it evidently does.
But how do you avoid that? You can't go, we need to make our programming more boring.
This is like Marks and Spencer trying to be Topshop, isn't it? This is the problem that you've got.
I think it's worse because I think it's the perception. So if Sky or whatever other fucking channel was doing it, if they were bringing on people like Nick Griffin or like UKIP people or whatever else, or putting Billy in the audience, it's bad, but it's a private company, we can take our money out of it, turn it off, whatever. When people see that on the BBC, I think it legitimizes it because the BBC are the fucking first to tell us public service broadcaster, whatever else, the licence fee has to be in place, because without us, without the glorious BBC, you'd be lost to the horrors of Murdoch media. So with that mentality, you should expect better from them. And I think the problem is that when they do some of this more extreme end of politics stuff, it legitimizes it. And I think the nightmare that we're in now, the BBC have a lot to do with it, because I think the rise of the far right in the UK, the reason why that has occurred is because the BBC have, perhaps accidentally,
kept fucking putting them on Question Time,
and given the public the impression that this is somehow normal. On a panel of 1 to 6 people, there's always going to be a fucking Nazi, which is kind of what they've given the impression of. Even though in the wild,
10 to 15% of any given population will be assholes.
Exactly, but even say in the real world, like you just said there, that only 15% of the country are Nazis. But why are
45% of the audience Question Time?
So why do they keep coming on here? Which again makes it normal.
So there's a phenomenon called the Overton window, which is like, the window of what's considered acceptable discussion or like a normal range of opinions in a society. And over time, that window will move to the left or to the right according to sort of social conditions. And what's been happening is that window has been pushing right. And as it's pushed right, what's considered the middle moves to the right. Okay, and that's problematic if you're on the other side of that, because what used to be considered a moderate opinion gradually becomes an extreme opinion. That's problematic, but that's what the BBC probably feels that they're just following the trend of public discourse and public opinion.
I think that's kind of like cart before the horse. I think it's more that they're leading it. I
know, but I don't think they realise that they're leading it.
Yeah.
Again, so people just think the BBC is this like one massive thing, and it's not. The BBC is loads of different departments that are like warring tribes. The entertainment and the drama elements. The staff are very left wing.
Well, it's like Fox News in America. It's like because Murdoch, obviously Fox does The Simpsons, and The Simpsons regularly make fun of Fox News and all the time on it. But they're made by the same company.
Yeah.
So it shows within an organisation you can simultaneously hold extremely left wing views and also very right wing views. You're watching something like, say, Strictly Come Dancing or Bake Off or whatever else it is. When Nick Griffin is just kind of in amongst a run sheet of fairly tame stuff, I think that normalises it. Because when they bring these people on, they're never really introduced as the horrible people they are. And I know it's not the BBC that only do this. I mean, I know fucking Steve Bannon was on Good Morning Britain not that long ago. But when it comes to the BBC, I feel that because of their reputation, earned or not, the public perception of them is that they're the middle of the road, they're normal, they're for everybody. So if I buy the Daily Mail, I know what shit's going to be in there. But if I get a more moderate newspaper, I'm going to think that what's in here is more acceptable, or whatever you would want to say. But then if that normal newspaper starts to drip feed in far right stuff, this must be normal now. And I think that's what the BBC have unintentionally or intentionally, depending what you think, have done. They've drip fed in.
It's a bit chicken and egg, isn't it? It's like, is the BBC responsible for this, or are they just reflecting what is actually happening in public discourse? And I think partly that there has been a shift that's not within their control. And like you said, it's the Overton window shifting. But I think the Overton window's been smashed to bits, and there's all these different ideologies happening all over the place, and it's hard for them to keep in touch with what reflecting the reality of societal views, especially because the parties don't reflect what's happening in society very well.
Yeah,
they're all split down the middle.
One of the things that annoys me most is anybody arguing, well, we need to do this because this is what the public wants. Because from my point of view, that's not what leadership is. You should have a think about what you think is the right way the world should be, and then you should stand for that. And you should defend that, and you should defend that position, that line, and hold that line. And when, for instance, the BBC puts Nick Griffin on because they say, well, X percentage of the population votes for him, so we need to represent him, that's a failure of leadership. That, in my opinion, that's just a failure of leadership.
So when you're taking a panel of 6 people and you're putting a nutter UKIP person in there, that is giving the public the impression that these guys are a much bigger deal than they are, because suddenly they're one of 6. They're not this tiny drop in the ocean, which they are in reality. They're nothing. Like, they're never going to get in power. This is just a loony bin end of the public spectrum. But you're then positioning them to be important. And I appreciate that there's complications with this because the SNP only represents 6 million people, but yet they've got the second highest party membership. So that is a challenge, I think, for the broadcaster. But how do you handle that? Because obviously Scottish issues aren't relevant to the vast majority of the UK, which is the vast majority of the audience of Question Time. So that's difficult to handle. But in terms of UKIP, though, they're just across the board not that big a deal. So
they had like 14%, so you can imagine them being on occasionally.
Yeah, but not to that. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, it should be like once a series you get them on. And it's a bit of a moment because we got those fucking racists in tonight, you know, but the way that they're regularly on throughout the series, they're not an anomaly. I think now, because everyone's objected to it so much, the BBC have backtracked. But I don't understand how, from an editorial standpoint, they kept going back to UKIP.
I think there's a bigger question, like about deplatforming people for
I don't really agree with deplatforming.
Yeah, and it's slightly different in terms of like Question Time, because you can just look at the how many votes people are getting and base it mostly off of that, because people generally don't vote for fascists all that often, so it should be okay from that perspective that you'll generally get folk who are reasonable people on. But the bigger question is like on Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that, kicking people off. I would be against that more.
I'm not arguing UKIP should just not be allowed on or anything like that. If you're a party that's formed and you can be elected even if it's shit, I mean the Tories are shit, but they are voted for. So I'm not arguing just deplatform them altogether. I'm just saying from an editorial standpoint,
they shouldn't be on every week.
Yeah, exactly. For balance, it should be, well, looking at this, these guys are clearly the exception, not the rule, therefore they should be...
What if they did become popular? What if they were getting, 25-30% of the vote?
But then I think that is the BBC doing their job, because then they are public service broadcaster and they are reflecting the public. I wouldn't fucking watch it, but, I'm just... That to me would make sense. I just don't feel that, if people that are voting UKIP are a tiny minority of the population... I don't see how they should be balanced in a panel of so many people, because it gives the impression that their worldview has as much weight as the Labour, the Tory and everybody else. And I think that it's more of the lack of responsibility.
I think there's a few
BBC.
ways that you could go about doing this. So one is that you could stop having... You can make it that you only had politicians on there and get rid of all of the newspaper commentators. I mean, right there, it means that Melanie Phillips is never on again, and the world can fucking breathe a sigh of relief.
She's a really vile person.
She's a cunt.
Imagine how often these people that get on, like comedians and all that, are absolutely useless. It's like, why did they even think it was worth bringing these people on?
Unless you're going to get Mark Thomas on, don't fucking bother.
Are they just to make the politicians look good?
If we wanted to build a Question Time that was better, my suggestion would be elected representatives only. No more commentators, no more fucking random actors, and an insistence that the audience actually represent the political makeup of the town, because this was the other thing that came out with Billy's episode of Question Time, was that it turns out, where was it, Motherwell or something?
I think it was Motherwell, yes. He has been on in other places, though.
He's not from Motherwell. Because the audience was really skewed anti-independence when Motherwell's pro-independence, and the general balance of it didn't seem to be reflective of the political balance of Motherwell residents. And the BBC had admitted that, well, actually, no, it's meant to be the balance of UK, not the balance of the town. Well, why the fuck is it on tour then? If you're going to put it on tour and you're going to say, welcome to fucking Motherwell, make it a Motherwell audience that reflects Motherwell, asking, right, this is Motherwell's fucking chance to ask that cunt there, what the fuck's going on?
The fact that it's on the road, I think, does add something to it. If, as you say, they allowed an honest audience in that actually was from the area. Because if they say, oh, by the way, we're in Glasgow next week, you're going, whoa, okay, that'll be fucking interesting.
Yeah.
In the same way that when your sport team goes to play away, the crowd are going to be a factor in this. And I just think, if you are approaching it from an entertainment standpoint, fucking let the audience loose. If you put a bunch of Tories in Motherwell and Motherwell just shreds them, I'm fucking going to watch that. What I'm not going to watch is when you get, here's Motherwell, which is clearly not Motherwell because no one's speaking with a Motherwell accent, and Billy's clearly a massive fucking Orange Order guy that would probably get beaten up on the streets of Motherwell. Yeah, that's going to kill it. And as you say, the idea of having it on tour, but yet everywhere you go, it's just meant to represent the UK, completely defeats the purpose, as you say, of it being on tour. So my version of Question Time would be far more take the fucking reins off. I would maybe agree with just make it politicians only, but I think it should be a ticketed audience that you get that come in off the street, and much like the Comic-Con panels, you know, around the country, there's one security guy with a mic and you get to go up to the mic and ask your question, and it's just a fucking free-for-all from there, and it's live. I know they probably can't do it live, but again, that adds that danger element.
And there's gunge tanks.
The gunge tank should be fucking brilliant. Yeah, the audience have to, if they all hit a buzzer.
That'd separate out the motivated, wouldn't it?
I think the audience actually is probably the problem with it, actually. I think the fact that the audience is selected and it's not more of a free-for-all, and really from either like an honest journalist point of view or from an entertainment standpoint, the way to fix it is to make the audience genuine representatives of the area in which you're in to record that show. And that, I just think, automatically, one, lends itself more towards better entertainment TV, because you go and go, fuck, anything can happen now. Whereas when you do watch it these days, I kind of know what they're going to say, i.e. the politicians, and I kind of know what questions they're going to ask. Like before Billy, when he's got a big fucking orange hoodie on, I'm going, all right, I wonder what this lad's going to come out with. You know, I mean, it's so predictable, and which is weird because we're on the one hand saying it's got to be more journalistically honest, but actually I think it could be both. It could be more journalistically honest and more entertaining, but they would have to take out the filter, and the biggest filter is on the audience because they're evidently checking that.
And part of the problem there is that, again, you've got the viewpoint of somebody who almost certainly is from the southeast of England, where politics are considerably to the right of what they are to Scotland, and their perception of what is centre is very, very far away from what our view of moderate and centre
the way that it should work is that there should be no window, to come back to the window is smashed.
It's an interdimensional window.
The window doesn't exist because the only thing that should matter is the audience. You shouldn't try and dictate what happens or where the window is. Are we left? Are we right? Are we centre? What the fuck's this? It should just be the audience. We bring in these politicians, 4 or 5, and the audience react.
Yeah.
And Fiona's job, or whoever's going to host our better version of it...
She's pissed on her own chips as well, taking this job, hasn't she? I mean, she just used to be that nice lady who used to be a newsreader who does Antiques Roadshow, and now everyone's calling her a cunt.
Yeah.
Wonder if this is working out as well as she hoped.
Guest host. You could rotate.
You could
do have
guest
a Get News
hosts.
For You format and have a guest host every week. I think the host's job shouldn't be to necessarily steer the conversation, which it often is. And it's also better when they don't know what questions are coming up. Because as far as I could tell, Dimbleby kind of roughly knew.
No, they do know what questions are coming up. Their questions are screened in advance.
Yeah.
So if you want to ask a question, you basically write it down and submit it in advance, and you're told that you're going to be called upon.
Yeah.
So that is all planned. None of that is sort of live or in any way ad hoc. That is all planned out.
Whereas the appeal for this show, I think, if you were to improve it, would be that whenever anyone stands up to the mic, everyone's on eggshells. The feeling that anything can happen.
You could put a minute's delay on it just to make sure that somebody doesn't take their top off or whatever.
Yeah, all live broadcasts are done like that. There's always a few seconds to censor shit, but.
I mean,
why did you think? Why did you think someone would take their top off? That was such an odd. I thought you were just going to say in case someone said a swear.
You get streakers and sporting events and things like that, and because people seem to keep getting their tits out against Brexit for a while, that was just like, put them away. But the Boris Johnson's sister fucking took her top off. Just like the Johnsons will literally do fucking anything to get attention. Fuck off, all of you.
Welcome to Extreme Question Time. Late night question time.
Your question is, what purpose does it serve? What's it there for? If it was just if it's to inform the general public, if it's to make politicians answerable to the general public, then why is anybody other than politicians on it? Right? That's your first question.
Get rid of fucking Miley Phillips. She can fuck off.
She can fuck off, and when she gets to fuck off, she can fuck off some more. So get rid of all of them. If it's not that, then let's admit that what it is just fucking American gladiators, but with Farage on.
Yeah, but I think that what we've come round to, though, is that by making it more honest, as in like making it politicians only and making the audience unvetted and with essentially live questions, happening in real time, but a few minutes delay to censor boobs or whatever is going to happen. Like that's actually probably more American Gladiators, but it's also more journalistically honest. So at the moment it's stuck in this nightmare no man's land of not being good entertainment, but also not being good journalism. Whereas if you just allowed it to be more straightforward and honest, the only caveat I'd probably suggest is that for every bit of vetting that you're no longer doing from the audience, I'd prefer that to be put to the politicians, i.e. we don't get a UKIPper on every single fucking week, because that does not represent the politics of the country. The panel should most times roughly look like a mini House of Commons, basically.
There are a lot of places where you don't have that opportunity at all, where like the public can ask politicians questions, because in American politics mostly it's just pre-prepared statements they're reading out the whole time. It's just so
but they do town halls, which our guys never do. It's a huge thing over there. It's like doing town hall meetings, and they'll often be filmed, and that is properly what you're talking about. Like that will be live. They'll just call on
instead.
people.
That's way better.
It was a town hall meeting where John McCain got asked whether or not Barack Obama was a Muslim, and it was a lovely moment, actually, because you saw John McCain's integrity bubble to the surface, and because he just went, his shoulders heaved like this, and then he went, no, he's a citizen of this country, he's a good man, and I'm not going to do I'm not having this kind of thing. And so you can get real moments in that sort of thing. So, fuck it.
We're scared. We're scared of an Obama presidency.
First of all, I want to be President of the United States, and obviously I do not want Senator Obama to be. But I have to tell you, he is a decent person, and a person that you do not have to be scared as President of the United States. Now, look, if I didn't think I wouldn't be one heck of a lot better president, I wouldn't be running, okay? And that's the point. That's the point.
I got to ask you a question. I do not I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not. No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
Once Scotland is independent, this is what our news, what one of our many news services should do. Just a fucking town hall free for all.
Yeah.
You know, this has got quite a good ring to it. Town hall free for all every Thursday night. You know.
BBC Question Time. This week we've got a hell of a show for you. Theresa May is gonna take on Jeremy Corbyn in a steel cage matchup. The loser of which will have to do a big fat dump before the entire nation and eat their own shit on live television. I never thought I'd see the day when a politician would have to get down on all fours and eat their own grubby mucky poop right off the studio floor. But we're gonna see that tonight. What do you say to it?
I never thought I would see the day either when a member of the British establishment would get down on their hands and knees and lick up their own break shit right off of the studio floor. But that is indeed what we're setting up for here tonight. So if you want to see Jeremy Corbyn or Theresa May eat their own shit on live television, you best stick around. This is gonna be our can't miss event. Sponsored by Blue.
BBC Question Time is just trolling the country. That's what it's doing. And so, you know what? The only way that you deal with that is by muting and blocking. Stop fucking watching it. Especially don't watch it on the fucking iPlayer, because then they fucking know how many people are watching it. Don't fucking watch it. Don't tweet about it. Don't complain about it. Ignore it. Because the only way that this fucking zombie is gonna die is if it's starved of human flesh. So stop watching it. Stop watching it and stop complaining about it. For